Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this Thursday edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show tonight, a public enterprises clarion call for engineers, read, white engineers, riles Eskom workers. NUM and NUMSA representatives are my guests. We'll also look at how the government's new 350 grant rules are hurting the poor.
You can't have so many people unemployed, so many people poor, people faced with this lawlessness I'm talking about. One day it's going to explode.
ANC troubles to the fore as the party pays tribute to its departed Deputy Secretary General. All that's coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. Stung by widespread criticism of its clarion call for engineers to help with the crisis at Eskom, the Ministry of Public Enterprises moved to clarify its stance today. William Mabapa is the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers. Phakamile Hlubi speaks for the National Union of Mine Workers, both leading worker unions at the power utility. First up, take a listen to what the Secretary of Trade Union Solidarity had to say following, of course, the call that was made a couple of days ago by the Ministry of Public Enterprises.
The ministers asked for actually all kinds of skills within the technical and engineering sphere. And we've asked what kind of skills. He wrote quite comprehensively in his letter what kind of skills do Eskom need. Now, this actually comes already from 2019. In 2019, the minister also did a call on all South Africans who has the necessary skills to come and help Eskom. And then after that, we had a campaign asking ordinary South Africans to raise their hands and say that here we are, we want to help. And we were quite amazed. 705 people said that we will help. That was quite positive, but nothing happened in 2019 with that. The fact of the matter is, I think Eskom is now critical ill in the ICU, so it's more important now than 2019. So in May this year, the minister also said that there's a technical skills crisis in Eskom, and then we followed that up and we wrote to the minister and said that we are willing to help. He came back and asked us to provide him with a list of skills, and he said we must do that on an urgent basis.
And that's the General Secretary of Trade Union Organization Solidarity speaking on our sister show, The Full View, earlier on. And before then, the ministry had issued a statement that reads in part, Solidarity wrote to the minister to offer its assistance in identifying skilled personnel. Further down, it says, or it reads, the government has been soliciting the inputs of many organizations and professionals to assist in identifying individuals who can come back to Eskom and help to get the old power stations back in order and mentor younger managers. To repeat, the minister did not approach Solidarity. He simply made a call to all organizations, including the social partners, for skilled personnel, regardless of race, to avail themselves to be placed at Eskom. We'll read the rest a little later, but for now, let's get William Mabapa, who is the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, and Phakamile Hlubi, who speaks for the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. Both, of course, are having a significant worker representation at Eskom. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. If I may start with you, William, you heard the bits I read from the statement. You also heard what the General Secretary of Solidarity had to say. Your thoughts?
Yes, Vuyo, thanks for the opportunity given. But I will take it that we are a stakeholder in the Eskom. Truly speaking, we need to be consulted, or as a stakeholder, we strongly believe that if there is something that is required from us, we really need to be told, not that we must see something in the newspaper, because my assumption is that something may have went to the media, and in that media, a requirement being said that there is a shortage of skills. Our worry is that if there is an issue about shortage of skills and other things, those are the things that the minister must approach ourselves as labor, because we are the stakeholders, we are the majority unions, we are the ones that must discuss as to what approach we must do, because we will ask ourselves, for example, that now it was an issue as to whether it is Solidarity that is doing something voluntarily, or it is something that the minister requested Solidarity to do. Was one of the reality that we are not going to avoid here is that there are policies and procedures that are binding Eskom, and then Eskom can't do anything on willy-nilly. But the other issue that we need to discuss, that one SNUM we think that is the most important issue, is that is the problem directly in Eskom, or is the problem in ROTEC? Because our understanding is that the complaint is about the maintenance of the power stations. And if it is indeed about the maintenance is not done by Eskom employees. The maintenance is done by the ROTEC employees, who also have got problems and challenges that they are telling us that in essence they are not working. There are subcontractors, whom majority of these subcontractors are the very same people that were working for Eskom. Now they left Eskom, they've got contractors, and they are working. And when the maintenance is done, we are told again that if they maintain a unit that will be on an outage, that unit will not even work for a day after it has been maintained by this contractor. So ours is to discuss and ascertain as to where lies the problems. And in us, we are saying as NUM, if the problem is maintenance, the problem can then be Eskom, because the problem must then be ROTEC.
Pagamile, your thoughts?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers, and good evening to the GS of NUM. Our viewers, Mumsa, is really that the question on process. We're asking ourselves, at what point did the minister usurp the powers of the HR manager at Eskom? We think that this entire process of him soliciting assistance in this way is highly irregular, especially because, as you know, working for a government entity, there's very strict protocols about, even as you recruit, as you apply, you adverts are placed, there's a whole process that HR follows. And yet here we see a minister who is usurping the executive powers, who's crossed all manner of lines as far as good corporate governance. We find this completely outrageous.
Well, let me read you something from the statement which speaks to the point you've just raised. Right at the end, the last sentence says, Eskom will follow its own internal human resources policies and processes to ensure that the appropriate engineers who possess the best skills and experience are hired.
Well, unfortunately, he tainted the process by advertising loudly that he was interfering. That's the problem. It's not his role. And secondly, the question we have is, what informed this? Was there ever some kind of a work skills audit done or work skills plan? Because that's actually what you need when you are, if you are saying that you've identified a problem, you don't just suck an idea in terms of where these people are to be found. It must be informed by a work skills plan. And it doesn't sound like any of that has happened. So we are deeply concerned, and at the same time, with this, I mean, as much as the minister will try and claim that they did not approach Solidarity approached them, there is a communication between themselves and the trade union Solidarity. With Solidarity, very clearly volunteers, ex-white employees to come in and assist. And this, again, for us, is raising very deep questions about not only is this minister usurping power that he does not have, but it does seem like there's an agenda to roll back on affirmative action and make an assumption that the people who are at Eskom now don't know how to fix this problem. And again, it's not an informed decision.
William, the statement also says that various professional and business organizations have responded and offered to assist in this regard. It is a pity that Solidarity and some in the media are politicizing this issue in the midst of a crisis that government is working hard to address.
Vuyo, we want to state it very categorically that we are a recognized trade union. It's the very same issue about the skills shortages. It is something that should have been discussed with us. It is something that we are supposed to have been convinced and shown that what type of skills are in short, and look at the modalities as to why those skills are running short. So we don't want to also, yes, politicize the matter, but we think that the approach from the beginning is wrong.
Well, let me read you. Let me read you something that speaks to what you've just raised. Right at the top, it says that the experienced engineers and technical skills were mainly hollowed out as a result of state capture and corruption over the years. Does that answer your question?
Vuyo, is not every engineer. You know, if you understand the engineering faculty, there is a lot. I don't know how many categories of engineering I can tell you. Now, if you want to assume to me that any engineer who never studied in relations to issues that are in relations to Eskom, and you think that that is going to be a relevant engineer because he's an engineer, I'm sure that is an area where problems come. Because being an engineer doesn't mean that you are a jack of all trades. That means you can just go anywhere, and when you come, you just become somebody that can come today. At the end of the day, you will be an engineer that must either study how Eskom worked for 2 years. Now, in this instance, for example, well, how can that engineer will not be helpful? So that is why I'm saying, yes, the matter, we understand that area, but our concern is that there are engineers even now, and maybe because the dominance of those engineers are blacks, and that is where the problems may also be. So we may not want to be politicized. That is why I'm saying the other reasons that we must follow, and I'll repeat this once and many times, is that there are problems in Eskom. If you ask where lies the problems, you are told about the maintenance. And our biggest question is, if you have got a problem of maintenance, is the problem in Eskom or is the problem in Rotec? Because Rotec is the one, unfortunately, Vuyo, there is a power outage, and I don't think I will ever be visible. I don't have alternative light.
Okay. Phakamile, you're not persuaded by the line that says now is the time to work together without any partisan interests and assist and support an earnest group of power station managers to improve the performance of the power stations?
Well, it's hard for us to be persuaded because the whole process is irregular. He's not engaging workers in the right structures. And so, again, it makes one wonder if this is not just some kind of elaborate PR exercise, because we know that that's something that this government likes to engage in without actually doing anything. And this is why, as a union, as NUMSA, we came out, to say, we had to say very strongly when you invited us on this platform that we don't support what the minister is doing. The whole manner in which he has started this process has been wrong from the beginning. If he was genuine about bringing us on board, he would have engaged in the proper manner. There is an actual recognized consultative forum at Eskom, and we are recognized labor. And he didn't follow that process. Instead, as much as he might try to backtrack now in the statement, it certainly came across as if he was engaging Solidarity or Solidarity was engaging him. But either way, it was inappropriate. And so if they want to correct this, they must take this back to the correct structure so that we can be engaged properly and meaningfully. They must also demonstrate a work skills plan to back up this needs that they say they claim to have. And they must ensure that whatever recruitment process is follows Eskom's basic standard, where black people are affirmed and that affirmative action policy is implemented. That's the main thing. We will not accept a rolling back on affirmative action because the way it came across to us, it was as if Solidarity was trying to reverse affirmative action through the back door, through bringing these what they call greybeards, who are old white men who supposedly know everything much more than the black or African workers at Eskom. So that is something that we just want to clearly outright reject right now.
Well, William, I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on this. There is a piece that has been circulating on social media, and we've been trying to get hold of him without much success. One, Dr. Bongani Mvelase, who used to work at Eskom, he says, I worked for Eskom for many years, and I never came across the register of such competent people. And neither did I witness their legacy of novelty they left behind. By the way, former white Eskom engineers never left Eskom. They were only transferred from normal salaried employees to contractors who continued to milk Eskom. Those that remained Eskom salaried employees were given special titles such as corporate specialists or the so-called grey beards. This was done and continued to be done irrespective of their qualifications and measurable contribution. These specialists or grey beards have two mandates: marginalize qualified black engineers and milk Eskom by providing no sustainable solutions so that they remain relevant to the organization. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think I saw the article. I read it more than twice because I saw it, I'm sure, 2 or 3 weeks back. And yesterday, when all these issues happened, I also visited that article to go and remind myself that what is this black engineer saying about Eskom? But I'm sure, as a person that has got an experience and as a person that has worked for Eskom, one makes a lot of consideration on the issues that he's raising. Amongst our members that are in Eskom, they are also raising a lot of sentiments of issues that are there, that in essence, you will find a person who is qualified as an artisan because I will take it that we all understand the difference between an artisan and an engineer. I will take it that an engineer is a person that will have done more in terms of technical issues compared to an artisan, because sometimes an artisan, it is somebody that is trained for a particular specific area. He has got limitations, particularly an artisan. But yes, an engineer is a well-backgrounded person that can easily be channeled from different angles. So I have read that article, and I believe that as an engineer that works for Eskom, there is a lot of issues that I heard from the Eskom employees that what is raising is true and has got a lot of sense. In essence, what is raising is what is happening in Eskom. That is why my issue is that we are a trade union. If there is a requirement that needs to be followed in Eskom, we don't have to hear on the media. There are forums in Eskom. We were supposed to have been invited in that forum and then be given an agenda item, and we will come and contribute. It's not a matter that we are saying we don't want to contribute. Let me just ask yourself, Boyo, truly speaking, as a trade union that is recognized where there are forums, we must then write a letter and say that we have seen an article in the newspapers or in the media that requires us to do that. So, and unfortunately, these are some of the issues that when you are going to put them in their clear perspective, other people are going to be angry. In this country, if you have a minister who doesn't know that there is a Labor Relations Act, truly speaking, what does that mean? Because any minister must know that in South Africa there is a Labor Relations Act. When I am a minister of a particular sector, the first thing that I must do if there are challenges is to invite stakeholders, and the first stakeholders is the trade unions that are recognized in that sector, discuss with them, hear their views, get their proposals, and if indeed there are proposals that need to be put in the process, like in this one, it will be something that they know that when you deal with this matter, there won't be challenges. Because the reality of the matter is that we do have members that has got interest. When a process cannot be fair, definitely will challenge that process. We will just challenge that process.
Okay. Before I ask for your last comment, Pagamile, I wanted to take a listen to what Dirk, the CEO of Solidarity, had to say earlier on when he was speaking on our sister program, The Full View.
It's quite important that it must be done with the current employees. Of course, we have thousands of members in Eskom, and we know how sensitive this can be, and we know also about the low morale. But remember, the workers in Eskom at this stage, especially on the technical level, but actually all workers, are really overstretched. And one of the reasons are skill shortage. So the fact is thus that we have a situation here that people can come in, help, and bring relief. So this will stabilize Eskom, and that is for the good of the workers, but of course of Eskom, but more than that, it will be good for all workers in South Africa, because the rest of South Africa, of course, also need a stable Eskom. The fact is that the crisis that we have at this stage, I think government is a big contributor to this specific crisis, but the crisis is not government's crisis alone anymore. That's all of us crisis, and therefore all of us must help to try to resolve this.
Does that not answer or speak to your concerns? One says the fact of the matter is that the workers who are currently at Eskom are stressed. Yes, such a process of bringing in skills and expertise would have to be handled with sensitivity and in consultation with the workers who are there.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the process was wrong to begin with. It was wrong to begin with. I mean, it doesn't. You can make all the heartfelt appeals on TV about us working together. Oksalayo, this was not a proper process from the start. There is a recognized structure, and as Comrade Mabape very clearly put it, why must we read in the media that there is a need for skills? If they're really reaching out, then reach out in the structure where we negotiate and where we discuss and where we formally consult. This is irregular. And we have a right to feel suspicious given that they followed an irregular process, and which they are now trying to regularize, utilizing the media. No, they were wrong at the beginning. From the beginning, the minister, if he really was, if his agenda was truly about solving Eskom's problems and working genuinely with labor partners, he would have approached us in the correct forum and in the correct way. And it would not be him, by the way. It would be the HR director, because that's the proper process.
Okay. And that's how we're going to leave it. Let me thank both of you, William Mabapa, as well as Pagami Lehlubi. And perhaps before we end, let's bring a tweet that speaks to something that I think is very important. We have Clive Hatch saying, only in South Africa, when all citizens are suffering, do you and trade unions play the race card. Where is the fair and impartial? No solidarity representative. The trade unions and ANC are killing SA with their racism. I guess the other parts were a comment, but I can answer the question of no solidarity representatives. We had reached out and they were going to come on the program, but there was confusion somehow. And Derek then was on our sister program, and they then said, well, they had no one else to bring on this show. So we did try, and our understanding was that someone was coming. Up next, tributes to ANC Deputy Secretary General Jessie Duarte. Welcome back. Well, the African National Congress today held a memorial service to honor its departed Deputy Secretary General, Jessie Duarte. Take a listen to what ANC former President Thabo Mbeki had to say at that memorial service a couple of hours ago.
I've been very fortunate in the last 2 weeks or so to get invitations from our provincial leaders in a number of provinces. So I've been going around a bit. And I'm very, very glad that I've had that opportunity, because it's brought me closer to ordinary members of the ANC. And there are many, many, many ordinary members of the ANC who are as concerned as you and I are about the state of the ANC. Who are not corrupt, who want to do something that this ANC of theirs becomes the ANC that it's always been.
Well, we are joined here in studio by the ANC's Suzanne Shabang. Good evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Evening.
You were at the memorial service.
Yes, I was.
What caught you, what for you, like really stood out at that memorial service as comrade after comrade started talking about Jessie Duarte?
Well, what stood out for me, it's the various people who were expressing themselves about Jessie's commitment, but also the discipline she had. And I think that was very important for me. And knowing Jessie, definitely how they described her today, it was the Jessie I know for many years.
And who's that Jessie?
Jessie, it's the comrade I met from Riverlea. She had a house in Riverlea with 2 kids and a husband. And that's the Jessie who was steadfast, very committed, but very strong. She was a little woman, but a very strong comrade and upfront, very frank. Jessie is the kind of a person, if she's upset with you. Very frank. If she's happy, she's happy. But Jessie was not the kind of person who would hold grudges. Very honest, very committed, but mainly very committed to non-racialism and detested gender violence in our country and overall. Hence, our involvement in working together with her, she was always upfront about this, and she was always perturbed by the issue of ANC moving away from non-racialism. I mean, even the last time when we met about 4 weeks ago, she still spoke about the issue of non-racialism and the face of the ANC changing. So I think what we owe Jessie as the ANC is to make sure we go back to the drawing board and we do what we believed in, because we did not believe in non-racialism in 1994. All of us who joined ANC underground, we all believed in non-racialism, including Jessie.
Why do you think the ANC of today no longer subscribes to non-racialism the way you ought to?
Well, I must say that there are various factors. One of the factors is the issue of interests and also lack of understanding of the political ideology of the ANC itself. I mean, when we as young people joined the ANC, the issue of non-racialism was one of the emphasis. We were taught what is it, what does it mean, and why is it important in the South African context. So when you look at it today, those values and those issues and how we're taught and brought up in the ANC, when you look at it today, it's different. The values today, it's about money. The values today are about us as individuals and less commitment to the organization. That is why, if you look at us today, we see the ANC collapsing. I mean, I come from around Gauteng. I couldn't take it when we lost the 3 metros. I became sick, and I thought I was sick, until I had to make a reflection and realize that what has happened was a shock to me. So
you didn't see it coming?
No. I think I underestimated that process, and we couldn't see it coming, especially some of us who never joined the ANC or part of the ANC because we're looking at personal gains. We belong to the ANC, which belonged in or believe in its values, non-racialism, non-sexism, but also making sure that we fight for the people. We continue with the struggle of improving the lives of our people. So when some of these things are happening, we were shocked, including Jessie, by the way. We did reflect on it.
You were there all along. You know, you're a minister, you served in the National Executive Committee. So over the years, you would have or should have seen the deterioration. You would have or should have understood what that meant, that people were slowly going to lose confidence in the once glorious movement. And that's exactly what happened.
I must say that, no, it's not over the years. Because if you look at us from 94 to date, and over the years, the drastic collapse or deterioration of the ANC did not start in 94. If you look at us from 94, when we started, if you look at us, I think around about mid-2014, That's when we started realizing all this deterioration and rot in the ANC. I must be honest, a lot of rot in the ANC, where you find that it's no longer about delivery. When you look at us at the beginning, our commitment was more to the people. We were able to deliver electricity, cheap electricity for our people. We were able to make sure that service delivery was there, a lot of things. In 2009 already, if you remember, we had delivered over 4 million houses, RDP houses, in making sure that we improve the lives of our people. And during that period, a lot of people had confidence in the ANC. But as you say, rot started coming in within the ANC itself.
You know that has a hollow ring to it in the light of what's happening right now. You know, the performance of Eskom. We don't have electricity right now. You understand that there's a hollow ring to it when many people still don't have houses, when South Africans are fighting foreigners, you know, because they believe they're taking their houses, they're taking their jobs. They hold them responsible for crime even. So whatever may have been the ANC that you're talking about, of which you're proud, sort of no longer gives South Africans any sense of comfort.
Well, I agree with you fully. Where we are today, we are no longer the ANC, which was the hope of our people. And hence, when you listen to President Mbeki, as he articulated where we've gone wrong and what we need to fix, I agree with him absolutely, because that's what Jessie lived for. We need to go back. We need to make sure that when we deliver services, we don't expect to be paid, because we must render service to the people. When we get elected, we don't get elected to line our pockets. We get elected to improve the lives of the people. I mean, as I say, when we started years back, that was the objective. When we were there during apartheid, fighting apartheid was to improve the lives of our people. So we need to go back to the drawing board. And we don't have time. I agree with you. We don't have time. We need to fix all the wrongs which we have done. We've got good policies as the ANC, but delivery of those policies, it's not there. And I think we need to look at those kind of issues to say the issue of young people unemployed, young graduates, it's not correct for us as a country. We've got to say, how do we correct those things? How do we bring that glorious movement to our people again? But it's about us going back to the people. If we continue to sit up there, our people are going to reject us. We must go back to the branches of the ANC, go back to our communities and fix all what is wrong. We still have a chance. We still do have a chance as the ANC.
Well, thank you very much for coming through and speaking to us, but also paying tribute to your comrade.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, take a listen to what the Deputy President of the ANC, who delivered the eulogy at that memorial service, had to say.
Jessie Duarte, I just want to say, stood for the truth, worked with everybody, and made sure that we achieve our freedom.
As we bid her farewell, let each ANC branch recommit to a code of discipline which will make her smile, her approval, wherever she is in her new world from which she will continue to look over us. Amandla!
It has indeed been a difficult year for the party and the country. Africa will remember them. It is our responsibility now to make sure that future African generations do not forget their struggle.
Thank you, Grandma, for teaching us to be humble, strong, committed, non-racial, kind, disciplined, funny, resourceful, and good human beings to others.
The way I feel, I can't explain. The gratitude inside for all the days, weekends, and sleepovers you spent on your couch or at my house, right by my side.
We don't know that coming to South Africa will ever feel the same without our grandma here. But we have the best memories with her and we'll keep these close to our heart. Thank you to everyone who have shown us so much support as Jessie's grandchildren. We hope that the paths we choose in life will honor the person she was to all of you and to us.
Every day, I held your hand and I prayed for peace and comfort. I asked God not to let you suffer. My hope was that you don't suffer. You heard me whispering my prayers while you were asleep. Heavily medicated at one time, you opened your eyes and smiled and went back to sleep. I knew you were listening. I'm grateful to have you as a mother. I am proud of you.
Ridding ourselves of these people who've joined the movement for self-service, to serve themselves, to enrich themselves, is a very good, a difficult challenge. We will have to go beyond deciding what is the definition to acting on the renewal. That is to honor the legacy of Comrade Jessie.
Honor Comrade Jessie, a revolutionary freedom fighter who dedicated her entire life to the service of the people of South Africa.
Amandla, long live the undying spirit of Comrade Jessie, long live.
To this now, the government's new 350 Rand grant rules are hurting the poor. Well, that's the stance of think tank, the Institute of Economic Justice. We're now joined by Kelly Wilhausen, who is a senior researcher for the think tank. Kelly, thanks very much for your time. What happened? What did you come across that made you reach this particular conclusion?
Thanks very much for having me on the show. Recently, the government has announced that they'll be increasing the means test for eligibility for the 350 Rand SRD grant. This is a very welcome development, and it's partially, we think, in response to legal action that civil society partners, including the Black Sash, have launched in order to address some of the key issues of unfairness in the grant. But this measure in itself does not address the key issues that exclude many people who should access the grant from being able to access it. And government figures show that in the month of June compared to the month of March, approvals were 20% lower. And because of new complicated application systems, a significant number fewer applied for the grant. So we saw about 3.7 million fewer approvals in June compared to March, a 20 percentage point drop. Sorry, 7 million fewer people receiving the grant in June compared to March.
But social development has acknowledged. We've had them several times here on the program. Over the past a few weeks, they have acknowledged that there are numerous problems, but they keep promising. They keep saying that they are working on them, and the situation is slowly, perhaps, but improving nevertheless. And they have also asked organizations like yours who have been able to come forward, with information from whatever quarters you're gathering from, and that they say is actually helping them move a little bit faster than perhaps was the case before. Do you accept that? That there has been some improvement, and that's what needs to be encouraged, and they are not necessarily offended by you raising these issues?
We absolutely acknowledge that there have been improvements and that this increased means test is a step in the right direction. It has been a very difficult administrative transition that the grant has had to go through in April. And we engage with the government and with the DSD in the spirit of cooperation, of trying to improve access to the grant, which we know also is their objective. However, the key issue stems from the irrational and arbitrary budget cap that has been placed on the grant by the National Treasury. The Treasury only provided enough funding in the last budget for the grant to be paid to 10.5 million beneficiaries per month, when in fact the government's own figures show that there are 18.3 million living in food poverty in South Africa. So the Department of Social Development has been forced, because of this budget allocation, to find ways of excluding people from the grant, basically. That includes the means test, but it also includes barriers to applying for the grant and other methods of exclusion. So ultimately, we want the grant to be extended to everybody who needs it. And in the long term, we want to see a universal basic income grant introduced, which would eliminate the risk of these administrative issues.
Now, I mean, they have asked for people to come forward. You remember that the minister, I think it was last week, gazetted the rules and regulations and is asking everyone to come forward. Have you heeded that call, even if it's just to make sure that your voice is being heard and the issues you're raising around the budget cap or the means test or the bank verification systems are taken on board come the time when they have to take a final decision?
Absolutely. So we'll be submitting detailed comments on the proposed amendments. And just to reiterate, we are very much in support of the aspect of the proposed amendments that raises the income eligibility threshold. But there are a lot of details in the amendments that we still find problematic. So we are submitting detailed comments on that to DSD. We know that our partners in civil society are also doing the same. And we look forward to engaging with DSD on the substance of those comments.
Well, at the beginning of, when we're hit by the COVID pandemic, I mean, your organization was one of those that when calls were made for a grant and other people felt it was unaffordable and so on, you were one of those organizations that started crunching the numbers to prove, or to demonstrate that it could indeed be. I mean, it was affordable. Have you done any similar, sort of number crunching exercises to check whether, in fact, the problem that we're dealing perhaps with a different problem. In other words, the government is finding it difficult, to actually afford this grant, but perhaps isn't saying so. And as a result, it's tampering with the eligibility criteria when, in fact, it is trying to deal with another problem. Have you done something like that?
So I think there are two issues here. We know that in the last budget, government budget, there was a higher than expected commodity tax revenue, which would have easily allowed for the SRD grant to be extended to everybody living below the food poverty line. So we know that the decision to exclude people from the grant was a policy choice that was based on the principle of austerity, of cutting social spending under with the excuse of kind of trying to get debt under control. But we also know that the best way to stimulate our economy and drive inclusive development in the long term is spending on social services, on infrastructure, putting money into people's pockets. And that's why we advocate for a universal basic income grant, not just as a way to deal with the immediate crisis of hunger and deprivation that we're facing, but also as a way to kickstart our economy, to draw more people into our economy. So we have put out detailed econometric analysis that shows that increased social spending, including a universal basic income grant, would have long-term consequences for inclusive development and for economic growth, and that it's affordable based on progressive taxation measures.
Let's leave it there for tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Kelly Hawson, who is a senior researcher at the think tank, the Institute for Economic Justice. So that's our show for tonight. Do join us again tomorrow evening, same time.